think.
I think the internet's going to treat me all right this morning. So radio check. Am I frozen? Can you hear me all right? Thumbs up. All right. Streaming across the internet spectrum from YouTube to X to Facebook and even Rumble. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you can also support the program by checking out some of the merchandise. Go to bishoponair.com for more detail. Some point this week, I am going to test out the Discord channel to see if we can get you guys to call in live at some time. So I hope to try to get that set up at some point. Today, we're going to take a look at an upcoming Illinois State Board of Elections hearing where they could vote to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. We'll see what happens there. But we'll also hear from William Kelly out of Chicago. Meant to check in with him yesterday, but because of the broadcast issues, we were able to postpone that to today. So we'll tackle that as well. We'll get the latest in the back and forth between the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois on the migrant issue. But next up, let's just take a brief look at some of the gun legislation that could be coming up at the Illinois State House this spring, with a series of bills. And by no way is this going to be an overall collection. We'll actually be kind of piecemeal looking at some of these things, especially as we've got a status hearing in the Southern District of Illinois Federal Court this Friday for the state's gun ban challenge in federal court. So that's just some of what we've got coming up today. A lot to tackle here with Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for taking time with me each and every weekday morning, and for your patience. So stay tuned. Got plenty to get to here with Bishop on Air. The Illinois General Assembly returns to Springfield next week for spring session, and they could take up a series of other measures to control guns as the state faces ongoing continued litigation against the gun and magazine ban implemented over a year ago. Welcome in, Bishop on Air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Friday, we will be taking a look at what's going on in the Southern District of Illinois federal courts, where you've got the ongoing, gun and magazine ban being challenged. And they're getting to the merits of the issue in Judge Stephen McGlynn's courtroom. But a status conference set for Friday. Now, you've also got the DeVore cases where I believe in late February, DeVore says that he's got a hearing on his challenge to have a court designate his client as a peace officer. But you also have the ongoing issues in the appellate court that DeVore's brought, as well as Dan Calkins bringing his case back to the Illinois Supreme Court, asking that they vacate their previous order that was issued in August. So clearly still a lot of moving pieces when it comes to gun ban litigation, but that's not the only lawsuit. You've got the National Shooting Sports Foundation. They still have that lawsuit against the state's firearms industry liability law that allows for lawsuits against the firearms industry. You also have several challenges against the state's FOID card, the firearm owner identification card. So clearly there's a lot going on there. But as we do this each and every weekday morning, let's take a look at some of the latest numbers from Illinois State Police. Doesn't look like they've updated the numbers since the 23rd, and I'll just give a refresh here. But clearly you've got the state, putting in the latest for people who've registered firearms. You're looking at 6,000 on top of the 30,000 or so that registered before the deadline. So those numbers haven't updated this week. But clearly, we'll update you on that as that comes out. But some of the things that the Illinois legislature could be taking a look at, a bunch of different bills. And I was able to just quickly grab some of them. And this is no way a complete comprehensive look at the entire list of gun legislation at the Illinois State House. But when they return Tuesday, they're going to obviously be, embroiled with the ongoing migrant crisis. But just some of the bills that could come up, and it depends on, obviously, if it's a Republican-sponsored bill or if it's a Democrat-sponsored bill. But just to get an idea of what some of the Republicans are looking at, you've got House Bill 4150, and it's got Republican support, and what it does is, the summary says, it amends the Criminal Code of 2012, provides that should provisions regarding manufacture, possession, delivery, sale, and purchase of assault weapons, 50 caliber rifles, and 50 caliber cartridges be found to be unconstitutional by a court, and appeals have been exhausted or expired, the Illinois State Police shall immediately and permanently destroy or have destroyed each endorsement affidavit and all information collected from the endorsement affidavit in possession with Illinois State Police and any law enforcement agency. So that's one bill that in particular they could possibly bring up. There's another bill that could also come up, and that is this measure called House Bill 4372. Again, House Bill 4372. This is also a Republican-sponsored bill, and it would repeal provisions of state law that makes mandatory changes to the Firearm Restraining Order Act that provides that a petitioner for a firearm restraining order may request a plenary firearms restraining order of up to 1 year, but not less than 6 months. It repeals provisions that the firearm restraining order may be renewed for an additional period of up to 1 year, and repeals other provisions. So Republicans looking to address the so-called red flag laws that a lot of people have concerns about. You have a Democrat bill, House Bill 4560, that would amend the Illinois Income Tax Act. This one's interesting. This one from Maura Hirschauer, gun control advocates. Her bill here, House Bill 4560 from the Illinois legislature, would amend the Illinois Income Tax Act and create an income tax credit for the eligible purchase of firearm safety devices. Is this something to encourage people to have firearm safety devices? Interesting. Again, that's House Bill 4560 from State's Representative Maura Hirschauer. You also have other bills that could be coming up. House Bill 3791. This has 20 Democrat sponsors in the Illinois House as of right now. And this, in the summary, it says it amends the Firearm Concealed Carry Act, provides that nothing in the act prohibits a forest preserve district from prohibiting persons from carrying a firearm into any botanic garden, campground, aquatic center, grounds of an aquatic center, boat launch, boating center, athletic venue, picnic grove, nature center, grounds of nature center, pavilion, grounds of pavilion, golf course, parking lot. It gives an entire list here. This is obviously, building upon the so-called safe spaces or prohibitive places. People, are prohibited from taking firearms in a variety of different places, but obviously you've got some Democrats wanting to prohibit firearms being on, certain types of forest preserve districts, for instance. So you've got that bill and a similar bill as well in Senate Bill 2425. So Senate Bill 2425 and House Bill 3791 dealing with where you can carry a firearm legally in the state of Illinois. Then you've got House Bill 4481. This one's a Republican bill, and it provides that security officers are exempt from provisions barring the carrying and possession of weapons in a vehicle concealed upon one's person or upon public streets, alleys, or other public lands within corporate limits of a municipality. It amends various other provisions allowing for security officers to carry. These are all proposed bills. And again, this is not an entire collection of all the bills, but we will be kind of unpacking a whole host because, listen, they file thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of legislation at the Illinois State House. So clearly this is going to be an ongoing review that we do looking at this as we move forward into the spring. Here's House Bill 4328. This bill, again, House Bill 4328, repeals and makes mandatory changes to the Firearms Restraining Order Act, repeals provisions of the firearm restraining order to be renewed in an additional period of up to 1 year. So again, Republicans looking to try to address that. You've got Senate Bill 2794. Again, Senate Bill 2794 it amends the Wildlife Code, provides it's unlawful for any person within 300 yards of an inhabited dwelling to hunt with a gun or dog, allow dog to hunt, or discharge a firearm without first getting permission from the tenant of the dwelling. And this is a Democrat bill, Senate Bill 2794. So right now it would, 300-yard restriction, it would bring that down to a 100-yard restriction. And this was put into a separate bill, an omnibus bill last year that didn't advance. So maybe separating this out, Democrats are going to look to try to get that through. That's Senate Bill 2794, limiting how close people can be to a residential area to do some hunting. But then you have a couple of different House bills, House Bill 4327 and House Bill 4304. These bills would repeal the Firearm Owner Identification Card Act. And of course, Republicans have been trying to do that for quite some time. Void the FOID is what gun rights advocates say practically every year whenever we are in the legislature. But whether it's going to come by the legislation here, which doubt would advance, you still have the court cases ongoing about the various measures in place to have people in Illinois who want to get a gun or ammo to file with state police and become a firearm owner identification card holder. And clearly, again, just looking at the statistics here from Illinois State Police, from firearm owner identification card data, 2.4 million total FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. That number has not increased. I'm not sure why not, but it hasn't increased for months. But you've also got just all of the FOID card questions of whether or not that's an infringement upon the Second Amendment right. So clearly we'll be watching all of this and more as we do each and every weekday morning, especially as the state legislature heads back into session. So stay tuned. We'll have more of that all throughout. So, all right, appreciate you guys being here. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. It's Bishop on Air each and every weekday morning here on YouTube, X, Facebook, Rumble. Appreciate you guys.
Donald Trump will most likely be certified to the ballot with the words
Donald Trump will most likely be certified to the ballot with the words objection pending next to his name. Then, as I said earlier, our board will hear that objection on January 30th, and then it will make its ruling, and it will.
Matt Dietrich, Illinois State Board of Elections, when we chatted with him a couple of weeks ago about the objection against former President Donald Trump. Today's January 30th. The Illinois State Board of Elections is going to be taking up some of these particular questions of Donald Trump's ability to be on the March 19th ballot. So last week, you had the hearing officers hear from objectors against Trump saying he incited an insurrection. You had other objectors against Biden saying that he didn't fill out his forms properly and that he's kept the border open and it's harming the country. So that happened last week. And then over the weekend, the hearing officers and other election officials made the recommendations that Biden be kept on the ballot, but Trump be decertified from the ballot. So if you follow me on Twitter, you can see that, and I think it's important for us to kind of take a look at where we're at in this ongoing saga with the Illinois State Board of Elections. So if you've seen the account and you follow me regularly on X, be sure to check that out, because you do get updates throughout the day on what's going on. But clearly, the hearing officer in this particular case saying that in the event the board decides not to follow the hearing officer's recommendations to grant a candidate's motion to dismiss, the hearing officer recommends that the board find the evidence presented at the hearing January 26th, that was Friday, proves by a preponderance of evidence that President Trump engaged in insurrection within the meaning of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and should have his name removed from the March 2024 primary ballot. So that is what was said to the State Board of Elections, which they're going to take up today. And that's going to be happening 9:30, and we'll review what the outcome is there in that particular case. But you had other objections as well. Those objections being filed by other Illinois voters against Joe Biden appearing on the March 19th ballot. And each instance, you had the hearing officer and the general counsel for the State Board of Elections essentially say that Biden should be kept on the ballot. But what does all this mean? You've got Matt Dietrich, who I talked with earlier this month about the prospects here, and moving forward, what are we going to see and as far as the process, right? Because they heard the objections on Friday. Then today they're going to come in and they're actually going to vote on this. It's a bipartisan board, the Illinois State Board of Elections, meaning it's got equal number Democrats, equal number Republicans. So it takes a majority vote to actually keep somebody off of the ballots. But does that even mean anything? Because you have the court system that could get involved in all of this. Here's Matt Dietrich from last week, or from earlier this month.
They can vote to sustain the objection, in which case the candidate would not be certified to the ballot. They can vote to overrule the objection, in which case the candidate would be certified to the ballot. Sometimes they can deadlock at 4-4. If that happens, then it's considered that no action has been taken on the objection, and the objection effectively dies, and the candidate would be certified to the ballot. Now, our board can make a motion on any number of things, so it's not necessarily that cut and dry that it would be a vote to sustain, a vote to overrule. A number of things could happen, regardless of what happens on January 30th. Whichever side disagrees with our board's ruling has the right to then seek judicial review. In other words, to take the case to court and go before a judge and try to overturn our board's decision. And that can wind its way all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court if necessary. So it's possible that that's what could happen with this case.
So again, today we'll see the outcome of that and whether or not we're actually going to have a vote to, keep him off the ballot and people appeal that to the courts, or a vote to keep him on the ballot and the objectors taking it to the courts. So clearly there's going to be some tricky things happening here in the days ahead when it comes to ballot access for presidential candidates. And again, just to recap, the elections officials recommending that Biden be kept on the ballot, but they're recommending that Trump be kept off of the ballot. More from Matt Dietrich from earlier this month.
Now, because there is this objection pending before Donald Trump, and potentially any other objections to presidential candidates that may be filed before next Thursday, Donald Trump will most likely be certified to the ballot with the words "objection pending" next to his name.
So you might see his name on the ballot, but it could have objection pending. And of course, depending on what happens with the court system in Illinois, you have that could possibly play out in the months ahead. But you also have the U.S. Supreme Court that is coming back from break to deal with this question out of other states and whether or not states can keep a presidential candidate off the ballot claiming insurrection in the 14th Amendment when that candidate hasn't actually been convicted of insurrection, let alone charged with insurrection. So there's going to be a lot of interesting things popping off here. And clearly here in Illinois, what it's going to play out to be, are voters going to be able to go to the polls and vote for Donald Trump? Or if they do, will their vote be nullified because the elections board may determine, oh, he's not on the ballot, but then you got the U.S. Supreme Court. It's incredible times we're living in, no doubt. So I appreciate you guys being here for part of it. So it is Bishop on Air. You can follow along anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. Again, bishoponair.com on X, on Facebook, on YouTube. Search Bishop on Air, and we can connect that way. All right, stay tuned. Always live here each and every weekday morning. Appreciate you guys being here so bright and early and so consistently. Thumbs up. Well, the cost of the migrants in Chicago is $1.5 million a day, while the city continues to process migrants and extending the 60-day limits they can stay in shelters, giving them resources to get work permits and food, 300,000 meals a week provided by the city of Chicago to non-citizen migrants. You've got people on the street frustrated. They feel that they're being looked over. And even the polling numbers of Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson not doing so well when it comes to the migrant issue. But there's been some interesting back and forth between, of course, Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. So let's go ahead and jump into the back and forth yesterday. But of course, you got the governor who's blaming the Texas governor for the migrant issue impacting Illinois.
Well, it's unfortunate that the governor of Texas is sending thousands of migrants to the city of Chicago. That is where they think they're going. That is where they expect to be arriving, not in Elmhurst, not in other suburbs, but in the city of Chicago.
So we'll hear more from what the mayor is saying, and as far as he wants migrants to be transported outside of Chicago to other places in Illinois. And the mayor making that statement last week, and the governor saying, well, listen, I mean, a lot of the resources are in Chicago, but he still points to the Texas governor as being at fault here. But what about the deal that seems to be coming together in Congress? Governor Pritzker indicating that Republicans are holding it up.
I think it's a sad fact that the Republicans are walking away from the table when they've got the deal that they wanted on the table. And the fact that they're walking away just tells you that this was all about politics from day one.
So the governor saying that, the deal's the deal and they need that deal in order to address the border situation. But that deal comes with, amnesty, a whole bunch of money for Ukraine. I don't know why those two are tied together, but still it's something that it doesn't really look like it's going to make it through the U.S. House, even if it was to get bipartisan support in the U.S. Senate. But to the idea of moving migrants out of Chicago, as Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has hinted at needs to happen. Here's the governor.
There is shelter and services, but the major and majority part of what's necessary needs to be in the city of Chicago. And we have been supporting the city of Chicago with literally tens of millions of dollars directly, as well as hundreds of millions of dollars indirectly.
So the governor also being asked about the appearance of a conflict between he and the Chicago mayor.
Do you feel that you and the mayor are on a different page on the migrant thing? There's a lot of kind of back and forth
You know, I know that it all gets amplified in the media. The reality is we literally, our senior staffs are sitting at the table every day, no exaggeration, every day with the county, I might add. And we have had meetings between the mayor, the county board president, and me to make sure that we're on the same page. So, you know, we're getting a lot done.
So the governor's saying they're getting a lot done, and trying to downplay any, appearance of conflict between the mayor and the governor. But you also have others in the Democratic Party saying that the Democratic National Convention should not come to Chicago until the federal government gives Chicago resources to deal with the ongoing migrant crisis. And Governor Pritzker being asked about that prospect that's floated by Chicago State Representative Cam Buckner, who wrote in the Chicago Tribune recently that the city should deny the DNC. Again, this is a Democrat saying deny the DNC coming to Chicago until the federal government gives us money. The governor reacting to that sentiment.
Why have the DNC even come here? When you have someone within your own party saying that, there's got to be some worry.
I think the reality is he's just trying to find any leverage in order to get the federal government to put in the resources that are required here. I approve of the idea of getting the federal government to do what it needs to do, but we're going to have a fabulous Democratic National Convention here, and we are going to provide for the migrants that are coming to the city of Chicago. The city, the county, and the state are working together to make sure that happens.
So clearly a lot more resources going to be needed. Haven't heard the governor explicitly say, let's just close the border. Instead, he talks about the deal that Congress is trying to put together that could include amnesty and more work permits and a whole host of other things, including money for Ukraine. But what about just closing the border? What about getting the National Guard from Illinois, from Texas, from Florida to help seal the border? And all the questions that there are about who's coming across, possible terror suspects coming across, and so on. But Mayor Johnson, yesterday held a news conference announcing that they are going to be delaying the 60-day deadline for people to move out of shelters in Chicago. He also laid out all of the resources that are being spent, 300,000 meals a week, $1.5 million a day cost. And he says it's not sustainable. That's why they need federal help. But here's the mayor kind of laying out all of what's happened so far, including the thousands of people being assisted by Chicago to get work permits who are here as non-citizen migrants.
Look, the state of Illinois and the county, to their credit, have appropriated dollars, for this mission. What I've said repeatedly is that this is not sustainable. It's not. And so the federal government has to lean in. Now, as far as what we do, because the costs are $1.5 million conservatively a day, we're going to have to push the federal government to do its part because we have limitations. That's all we have right now.
So is the city trying to say that you are pulling back on your plans, you're not going to open any more shelters, and that's it?
Our plan is still the same, to build an operation that's centered around people's humanity. And just keep in mind, I just hope you all hear this. There's nowhere else in the world that's doing it like this. Nowhere else in this country. And the only reason why I'm lifting that up is because as hard as we are working to address this crisis, it would be nice to have some partners outside of the state of Illinois and at the federal level to help us. You have faith leaders, philanthropic leaders, the business community, government, all doing something that has never been done before. And quite frankly, it is not designed to do. It's just not. So this is an evolving mission. We're working hard every single day to continue to advocate for resources. Many of you all know that I've spoken with mayors from other surrounding cities. The governor, the state of Illinois has offered $40 million for other municipalities. Remember that, you all? Remember when he offered that? And then remember he offered another $11 million? So we know that it can't just be the city of Chicago. Everybody knows that. But we're going to do the very best that we can to to drive this mission and to challenge people to step up.
So obviously the mayor demanding help from the federal government, saying that needs to go outside of Chicago to other municipalities across the state, saying there's millions of dollars the state's offered in grants. People don't really seem to be taking that up. But clearly this, again, is a mounting issue, a humanitarian issue, a taxpayer issue, and I don't see much being mitigated before the November 2024 election. We'll watch that as it continues to impact the state of Illinois. It is Bishop on Air. Appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. So you can like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and follow along with us as we broadcast each and every weekday morning across the internet, from YouTube to Rumble to X to Facebook and beyond. All right. Again, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. All right. So obviously there's a lot going on in Chicago, and we meant to connect with William Kelly, a reporter out of Chicago, yesterday, but internet problems aside, glad we were able to reschedule to talk about important issues this morning. And William, of course, over the weekend, there was a tragic shooting Friday as school let out in downtown Chicago. A couple of young children were shot and killed. Obviously, there's a lot going on in Chicago, but tell us about some of the latest headlines and where Chicago finds itself among the rest of the country for violent shootings. Good morning.
Good morning. God bless you, Greg. Dual crisis, violent crime, and migrant crisis. They're competing, nose to nose, neck and neck. And yet Governor Pritzker sent the Illinois National Guard to the Middle East. It doesn't, it doesn't make any sense. Obviously, if it would make sense to me to send the Illinois National Guard to Chicago immediately. They're apparently the Chicago and Illinois both lead the nation in mass shootings. We've had, again, back-to-back mass shootings in Chicagoland. But this murder, of these two CPS students, Chicago Public School students, leaving school at 12 noon on Friday, I think is especially significant. It shows that this is downtown Chicago. This is Wabash. This is what they call Jewelers Row. Some people might even call it the financial district. Okay. And we keep asking the question, when will people return to work? When will people return to the office? Why would anyone in their right mind even consider doing that when there's when students are being shot dead on the sidewalk in the middle of the day, Greg?
Well, and William, some other stories from over the weekend. Somebody was shot in the chest and crashed into a tree. They were found dead. You had a concealed carry holder get into a shootout with carjackers in the city. So, when it comes to the police response to these things, how can the police properly respond?
There were 7 shootings in Chicago last night. Okay. Again, why the National Guard is in the Middle East is, I'll be honest with you, it's a little, I'm a little stuck on that one, Greg. And when you think of these 2 CPS students, understand more money was spent on their education than was spent on my education. But yet somehow there's some disconnect when it comes to values, when it comes to responsibility. If you look at their Instagram accounts, I don't know how much of these social media or videos of the actual shooting are still up. They're pretty gruesome, by the way. But and speaking of police response, the police, did a heroic, as always, effort to try to save the lives of these students as they bled out on the sidewalk. But when you look at their Instagram accounts, you have to ask yourself, they had a better house, better cars, better clothes, than I did when I was a kid, than most people probably in the world today, and yet they ended up shot dead on a sidewalk in downtown Chicago. This is significant, Greg, and I'll tell you why. Because there are more cameras in Chicago than there are in London, in police surveillance cameras. So the shooters, the people who committed this shooting, they clearly did not care that they were being filmed doing this. Okay, there was a time where maybe if there was some neighborhood beef or some whatever, they would wait for these students to go home, to go to the neighborhood, to go somewhere local. But their attitude was, hey, downtown Chicago is as good a place as any to shoot people, Greg.
So, William, obviously there's a lot to say about the ongoing violence in Chicago, but you also have the other issue of the migrant crisis. And last week, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson suggesting that the state can do more to move these migrants in other jurisdictions outside of Chicago. And the back and forth between the governor and the mayor included yesterday the governor talking about stepping up and providing more dollars to Chicago, and Chicago stepping up and saying that they're extending the 60-day limit for migrants to stay in shelters in Chicago. But clearly this is an ongoing crisis that you don't really have the mayor or the governor putting pressure on the White House to close the border. Instead, they're pushing for amnesty. So I guess what's the sentiment like in Chicago of those on the streets? What's pushing for the mayor's polling numbers indicating when it comes to this particular issue?
Well, it's a crisis of leadership at this point. When an elected official says that they're going to have, something is going to happen on this date, and then it doesn't happen on that date, and then it's pushed back to another month, or that they're going to spend this much money. And then it turns out that in Johnson's press conference yesterday, he said that he's spending $1.2 million or $1.5 million on the migrant issue every day. And as a reporter, as a lifelong Chicagoan, someone who loves Chicago, make no mistake about it, it breaks my heart to realize that we have a crisis of leadership now, a crisis of competence, a crisis of leaders that even seem to understand our founding documents, freedom of speech, for example. I wasn't allowed to attend the press conference yesterday in City Hall because the previous mayor revoked my media credential because I was asking too many questions. You can't make this stuff up, Greg. But we're going to keep trying to get the answers. And an obvious question that I would ask is, where's the accountability? What is this money being spent on? Who are these vendors? How are you choosing who to spend this money on? If you remember, Greg, we broke the story and I believe killed the plan to build to house migrants in tents in the middle of winter on a toxic waste dump. And we were able to do that just standing out in front of the toxic waste dump. Imagine if we were actually, if I was actually allowed to attend press conferences and ask the mayor actual questions, Greg.
William Kelly, reporter out of Chicago, greatly appreciate your time as always, and we will definitely be checking back in next week to get a continued update of what's going on the streets of Chicago. Be safe out there, all right?
God bless. Thank you.
So there you have it. Conversation with William Kelly. Glad we were able to connect despite having internet issues yesterday. So thumbs up. We'll check back in with him on Monday of next week to get the latest of what's going on. Appreciate him taking time with us as always. All right, that's all I got for you today. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks again for your patience. All right, really do appreciate everyone tuning in. And even coming back after, having internet problems yesterday. Update on that. My service provider said, hey, we couldn't get it done yesterday. We're going to start again on Tuesday. Thankfully, they haven't started yet. So, got clean internet here now. Looked into other options yesterday. Starlink might not be what I need. So maybe I just have to give my internet service provider even more money. Great. All right. Thank you so much for being here each and every weekday morning. It really is humbling to see everybody in the chat and to have the numbers continue to go up. So it's just, let's keep it up, I guess. I got to get out of here. Have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy the Tuesday. Hopefully you get more sunshine and things look brighter. All right. Love the ones you're with. Be kind to your neighbors. And importantly, be kind to yourself. All right. Bishop on air, signing off. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday. Promise? Okay, good.